So I wonder if we've got any questions from the audience. We have indeed. Great. Saves you having to listen to my questions, which are not going to be as good as yours, I can assure you. When you ask your question, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and where you're from, that'd be very much appreciated for the audience and for the questioners. And if you've got a general question or if it's specific for the panelists, please direct to the panelist. Your microphone will come on as you're ready.
Pak Rizal dulu mungkin silakan Pak. Oke, maaf Pak ya.
Hi, I'm Rizal Ang from Indonesian Pole and Line Association. My question is going to be for Ms. Shenyang Liao. As we have all been informed that small-scale fisheries stands for 50% of the global catch, and but most of the catch are sold domestically, and only a quarter of it made it to international market. Big retail chains dominate the seafood market, as we know. They are all under increasing pressures from the consumer for sustainable seafood movement. And MSC has played a bigger role for this movement. While this has resulted in the big and positive effect on many of the large industrial fisheries, while at the same time it has negatively impacted our small-scale fishery. It has become increasingly impossible for us to achieve the MSC certification due to its high cost and low applicability in the small-scale fishery globally. So, as we have, we know from your presentation, this is getting further and further away by also digitization of this. It took us 7 long years to achieve the MSC certification. So the question is this: is there any scheme that MSC provide to accommodate more and more small-scale fishery to get into this, and maybe lowering the cost of certifications or make it more applicable for us? Thank you.
Thank you so much for this question. I hope the mic is working.
Yep.
This is indeed an important part of the MSc program, and we recognize engaging just, the 19% that I was telling yourself that is currently engaged in the MSc program. This is not enough for an organization that is trying to drive sustainability movement for the entire seafood industry. We have a strategic work stream at the moment that I'm also actively working on myself to transition the rest of the 20%-ish currently engaged in the program, the remaining 80%. So how do we bring them on board with us towards sustainable practices, even achieving the MSc certification? So we have, in 2019, launched the In Transition to the MSc program, currently in pilot. So looking to work with FIPs, so Fishery Improvement Projects, looking at solutions as well to capacity built, offering them fundings to improve their action plan towards the entry of the MSc full assessment. So we continue to seek feedback, and we'd love to hear from you. What are some of the challenges that are making improvements towards meeting the MSc requirement challenging, perhaps, and how can we evolve our program ongoing to ensure we do not make the program less accessible, and what other solutions we can bring along. Also, your supply chain towards digitization. We're actively looking at feedback and opportunities and solutions, so please come talk to us, and we'd love to hear your recommendations too.
Yes, by all means.
So just having stepped off the board of Marine Stewardship Council several months ago, I personally don't think MSc is set for purpose for the majority of Southeast Asian small-scale fisheries. I think it's a tool that's applicable to especially northern fisheries, which are single-species fisheries. For multi-gear, multi-species fisheries with small-scale in a small-scale setting, I don't think it's a good fit, really. So I think there is an opportunity for a regional-based, much simpler and much less expensive system perhaps MDPI or the other partners can really think about what that is to really solve whatever you are looking for, whether it's market access or other things. But yeah, I don't quite think it's really fit for purpose, to be honest. So that would be my quick one.
Sure, okay. Next question, please.
Hello, my name is Ilham. I want to ask Yan again. So I really eager to learn about your organization. Maybe you can share approximately about the annual budget of the organization for the digitalization of the system. I mean, I wanted to know whether is it really important to invest that much of investment for digitalization, and what do you expect in the next few years? Will it increasing, and whether you expect the outcomes like more effective? Is it meet your needed on your expectation on the benefit of using the digitalization in the organization? Thank you.
So nice to see you again, Ilham. At the MSC at the moment, a lot of our finance are focusing on developing this platform that we've mentioned earlier in digitizing our auditing. There's also technology budgets behind the scene and maintaining the operation. It is very true. What is our next step in also incentivizing the industry in meeting these increased demand too? So that, from a staff perspective, we have not yet been given visibility of that. But again, this is an area that we're actively seeking feedback still. I think this is a very good time for us to bring this feedback back to the MSC management. On the other hand, we've also launched for a while now the Ocean Stewardship Fund. So these are funding going to, at the moment, largely fisheries, but we've also used the funding to look at some traceability support as well, but definitely not enough, especially when making this movement and accelerating in this space. So thank you, Ilham. We'll bring this feedback to the MSC.
Are there any other questions for the panelists, or shall I go ahead with some of mine? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Still questions to MSc, not probably a comment, more to a comment, sorry, I'm sorry. The reason why, I guess, but before I just need to disclose myself that I am, or I was, or I am still, one of the MSc auditor for one of the principal under the standard. This is, the point that I like to make is that because for us who have been working on the ground to advocate for sustainable fisheries management, especially in Indonesia as well as in the regions, we need a system actually to incentivize the compliance from fishers. Compliance is just one component, but I think it's very important. Something that attracts or motivate the fishermen, small scale especially, to comply, to do, to use, for example, sustainable fishing gears and practices and so forth, right? I'm not sure whether this is the conference that is the right forum to ask, but just to get to the point, because eventually what we like to see is that the fishery that have been certified actually has a good market, so that the money can hopefully trickle down back to the people who catch the fish, the fishers themselves, right? Which is, I think that is sort of the idea through the increase of the value in the supply line, the supply chain, whatever the expectation is, that by involving in this whatever certification scheme, people who are here in catching the fish will get some benefit out of it. But we realize that it is actually defined by the people who are in the end of the supply chain, which is the consumer, right? So are there any effort that MSc, for example, have done to increase the awareness of the consumer themselves to buy more sustainably coached product, for example? Yeah, but we know that people have been investing in technology and everything, but I think we also need to work to address the needs, what do you call the key component at the other end of the line, they will actually define everything backward to the downstream. I'd like to have your comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is not straightforward, and we are currently, from a program perspective, we continue to monitor the impact of MSC labeled fish, how much it is at retail price and how much that return back to the fisheries. Ultimately, we have not been demanding data as such, so these are quantitative research. And so we're only, having a piecemeal understanding of that socio-economic impact. And I think behind the scene, there's a lot more interest to better understand and better reflect what other mechanism the MSC could offer. But from my understanding, these are still research-based effort internally. And looking at domestic market, I think Indonesia, with the support of MMAF as well, there's so much interest to build domestic interest and driver for a sustainable product, and hopefully your consumer, your local Indonesians are able to directly connect and contribute to that value chain. Again, this is a great collaboration we look forward to locally developing. And I wonder if any other panels had additions as well.
So, Pak Halim, yeah, a great question, and it's something I think everyone's wrestling with. But I would actually look back to MDPI and the work that they've been doing with fair trade, which is actually, although not the environment bar is not so high to begin with, it's a step-by-step process that the resources actually eventually come back to the community in some form. Whereas I think some of the other standards, it's actually about the different stakeholders along the supply chain. But actually fair trade is really focused on the fishers themselves and driving through, whereas I'd say MSC is more about industry and those consumers pulling through at that end of the value chain. So I actually think Indonesia has a lot of great opportunities to build around the fair trade work and really think about what that model looks like, both for their domestic fisheries, but also for export fisheries. So I think that's the real opportunity in that space.
Okay, just to try and give Jan a little bit of a chance and to have a rest and to see if we can facilitate some of the questions. I'm just going to ask a question myself and then I'll come back to you. We've still got plenty of time. So question for Griselda and Cherry. Getting fishers to actually collect data is often a challenge, and getting them to share it with third parties is even more of a challenge. I just wondered if you can both give us a quick overview of how you achieved both getting the data collected and then the agreements to share it, because I've seen, we've heard earlier in the conference, it's a real challenge getting access to data and being able to share it. I just wondered from your context how you achieved that in the Philippines and in South Africa.
Yeah, hello again. So yes, it's really challenging, but maybe what we did was first we approached the local government to really kind of to know what data that they're trying to collect also from the fishermen and why they are having a hard time. So, and then we kind of work around on that problem and move back to the fisher folks and ask them if they want to participate. Actually, what we did was, during my project, we hired our own personnel, ground personnel, to really be on the site to interact with the fishermen. And most of them are living in that coastal area, so they can establish a good communication with the local fisher folks. So that's what we did, and since the ground personnel is familiar with the area, they easily establish a contact. Okay. And most of the fishermen who responded became his friends or their friends, and they easily, actually, this is a funny feedback from one of our location. They still wait for our ground personnel to give their data. So what I see is they get excited in a way, sharing their data, and they want to look forward on what will happen to that data. So for us also, that's an opportunity for us to really use or let them know that their data is valuable by really connecting them and incentivizing them. So yeah.
Griselda?
Yeah, so I think for us, we co-design with the fishers, so I think it builds trust. Most of the time, the fishers use their own data. We might use general data, but it's never on a personal level. But they might use it to gain, financial access or stuff like that. Yeah. Working with the fishers, I think, is the key for us.
So co-designing in trust was the way to access the data, and maybe that's a lesson for lots of us who are trying to secure data moving forward. Any more questions from the audience? Please.
Thank you. Yeah, I have two. One for Pak Subki and one for Senyan. Yeah, Arif Shah from Greenpeace. So for Pak Subki, I know the local market is also quite huge, based on the fish consumption. So I think also in terms of justice, I think we need also to provide the sustainable and also traceable and also legal fish for our local consumption. So I just want to curious whether there is a specific strategy for MMIF to develop kind of strategy to encourage this demand also within the Indonesian market, because I think it's really quite big market if we want to capitalize in that sense. And second, for Senyan, I know the MSC last October launched the labor eligibility requirements. So I just want to curious whether if you could briefly update us about how this requirement is being applied with the existing certifications, or maybe with the upcoming certification. Is there any challenge? So, and also with who, because I know maybe there is some limitation for sure, but I think it's maybe how many maybe groups or maybe how many organizations already could be involved in that implementation of the requirements. Yeah, thank you.
Ya, terima kasih pertanyaannya. Thank you for the questions about the strategy for the fulfilling the domestic markets. Of course, we in Indonesia now we have reached almost 270 millions of the population. So we can imagine if every day half of it consume fish products, then how many million tons that we need. So that give us the numbers, the value, and the diversity of the products to fulfill. So now in terms of the national, of course, based on the mapping and the observation, the first of our strategy is is to maintain the supplies based on the preference, because the preference of the fish consumptions in Indonesia mostly is very related to the local fish products or fish, whether it is the capture fisheries or the aquaculture. So that's number one. So we cannot change immediately people that usually consume every day, say in Palembang, in Sumatra, they consume pangasius or ikan patin. We change it into the pelagic fisheries, that it's very almost impossible. So that's the first, that we follow that, but then we have to strengthen the supply chain in terms of the efficiency. So because the area of Indonesia is so wide between west and the east, so the efficiency, the logistic efficiency issues is still top of other issues. So in terms of the loads into the price of the fish per kilogram, but we are working for it because we have now the policy. This is the opportunity for us to improve how we can set up the better national fisheries logistic. Number two is based on the pandemic, during the pandemic, you know, the newer today's generation, they like to eat fast. They don't prefer to cook, but they like to directly consume practical food. They use microwave, microwavable products, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and then they go to work and they go to the campus and so on. So I think this change also has to be observed and has to be, put into the consideration on how we fulfill the domestic products, because people under 25, under 20 now in Indonesia, beginning more to know about the Indonesian fisheries products, ikan mas, pangasius, skipjack, or everything. They know better to know there. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. On the MSc labor eligibility requirement, indeed, last October we launched version 1 of the requirement, but the MSc had been on a journey on labor consideration and social practices for a while now. So in 2015, for example, we condemned forced and child labor, and we don't tolerate that. And so we've initially in 2015 introduced forced and child labor, and any prosecution within 2 years, any fisheries or certificate holder for a chain of custody will immediately be examined and not be qualified for a certification. But we recognize that was quite weak because it requires government framework to be able to effectively prosecute or convict business operations. So we continually evolve the labor requirements, and because we recognize we need the solution within seafood supply chain. So the one launched is version 1 of our requirement last October. It's become effective early May, so May 1st this year. And we ask for all operation at sea, fisheries that continue to be part of the MSc program or applicant, they will have to self-declare their labor practices. So definitely no forced and child labor before they're allowed to continue to maintain their certification. And what are their solution as well or system in managing their labor? So these are declaration for at-sea vessels. Like all our fisheries assessment, they're publicly listed on the MSc website, and we value stakeholder review of them and even scrutinization of them. If you don't believe they are transparent enough, or you want to encourage the fisheries to declare some more of their practices, indeed, that's why the MSc make those reporting public. For the chain of custody perspective, we've also slowly evolved businesses that are maybe of higher risk, initially prioritizing countries that have maybe higher risk for labor violation. But we've, since October, have prioritized risk-based activities. So companies that process, repack, contract process, or manually offload at the port. These are businesses that will require self-declaration for their labor practices. Again, no forced and child labor, otherwise they will not be qualified for certification. So hopefully NGOs like yourselves see this as a good pathway, and MSc continue to look at new policies as well and solutions, for example, grievance mechanism to continue to support our crew members at sea, but also labor in our supply chain businesses. And we continue to partner as well with research institutes. How do we effectively audit crew members on board the vessel? And we encourage, again, some more interactions with you, how we collaborate on this space.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. I'm not sure I'll ask Jeff, but please, thank you.
Hi. Thank you very much, all, for your presentations and for the time taking the questions. I'm Kai from MDPI. We do work with fishers, so maybe this question is for you, Griselda, from Abalobi, or for your colleagues. I heard this morning about leverage, so fishers having data as leverage, so not just compliance, but really using that data. I think you've mentioned a few times that they are doing so, and they're actually seeing that their own data as something useful, which is already, I reckon, a big achievement. So maybe the question is, which angle do you take to improve their capabilities. As you know, fisheries management, it might not be the easiest subject. How technical do you go when you get these trainings? Do you focus on, well, actually all the stocks are going down and really getting that anxiety? Or sometimes fishers do see with their own eyes. They've got their local knowledge, of course, but at least at MDPI, many times the example we put is like, oh, stock ikan habis, right? So that's always the main example, like, hey, the trends of the stocks are going down. That can reach a little bit of eco-anxiety too, I reckon. So just, which angle do you take at Abalobi in order to improve this capability and get fishers way more comfortable with their own data? Thank you.
Maybe one of my colleagues can also add, but yeah, I think all our data is available on our Abalobi app and the website. So fishers always have access to it. I think if I understand you correctly, we're looking at the stock of a specific species in the ocean. So, you know, they can see where they fish and where they're fishing the most. And most of the time the fishers comes to us, obviously based on their experience, to say, we're not going to fish in this area, we're moving away to a different area, a different reef. Yeah, so it's all coming from the fishers. We're just facilitating it, we're just making their data look pretty, basically.
Yeah, well, to add to that, actually it's more of letting them know that technology helps them to get higher value from their catch, especially on the small scale. Because what we found out, it's still existing. Most fishermen just want to sell immediately, even with the low price, because they really want to go home or kind of feed their family because they need it immediately. But then again, as they say, if you want value, you let them know how much they value. So we're kind of letting them know that it's a little bit a little bit wait, but then again, it gives you more value than really taking home this piecemeal that tomorrow worry again and go out again on the sea and really work hard again for that small amount. It's like putting more dignity on what you catch. So yes, technology is like, they always say, oh, we're fishermen and we don't understand technology because we lack education and all, but we kind of laymanize everything for them. So it's more on interaction, maybe knowing your users. So that's how we giving them the value of what we do.
Excellent. Jeff? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, this is not an MSc question, kind of, but not. Stuart, given that your presentation talked about AI readiness, and most of where the AI readiness index was poorest was in those countries that we would probably agree, you know, something like the MSc is not fit for purpose. How do you see, just maybe a little bit of a glimpse of how you see the role that AI and other, you know, the digitalisation of fisheries in the world can support those improvements and responsible kind of behaviour of fishermen, and then maybe even become, you know, something that can be demonstrated in a market environment. Is that something where it could go, or are we focusing just now on things like identifying fish and, you know, some of the other topics that we've been hearing a little bit more about here today?
Yeah. So great question. I don't think there's a magic bullet answer, but I think we do need to put the guardrails in very quickly around AI, and I think that's actually government and policies in some form or manner. And although there's been pushback from majority of the tech industry around legislation and policies, I think, for me, I think the opportunity actually is to look at Singapore a bit more? What have they put in place to create that enabling environment? How could we work with ASEAN then to get that across the whole of the region and kind of have Singapore kind of big brother, small brother kind of work together for the region? So for me, it's really about putting that enabling environment in place, but also the opportunity working with business, academia, who are also doing some really interesting stuff in that space. But until we create that enabling environment, yes, I don't think. But Abalobi could go in as its own kind of system. So the systems that are pre-built. But again, I still think at the regional level, really need to look at how to create that enabling environment. And we've got privacy, data security. We've got all kinds of issues around that. Until that enabling environment is in place, I think there'll be some opportunities, but not much. And once that enabling environment's in, then maybe the scalability of the tools would become much easier. So no magic answer, but I think for me it's about getting that policy enabling environment in place as soon as we can in some of those across the whole region, and then the region would become very competitive. So if you think about global tailwinds and headwinds at the moment, you've got trade issues across certain regions and countries, and I think Asia Pacific has an opportunity to position themselves neutrally around those trade wars that are going on, especially around semiconductors, etc. So I think actually the region could be a net beneficiary, but I do think they need to put in that policy kind of enabling environment first to create that opportunity.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us and for having a great question, answer and debate session. If you'd like to join me thanking the presenters for their insightful presentations. Thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of the SAFET conference.
Just quickly before you guys go, after, I was about to say morning tea, good grief. After afternoon tea, there's a special session in Nusantara 2, nothing on in this particular space. And a big reminder / shout out to please continue to share your experiences on social media, please. Hashtag SAFET, right? Thank you. LinkedIn, on Facebook, Twitter, or what's Twitter called now? X. Beautiful. So that'll be much appreciated as well. Thank you.